20 years after the United Nations General Assembly declared May 3rd World Press Freedom Day to raise public awareness of the importance of freedom of the press and to ensure governments uphold their duty to respect the rights of freedom of expression under the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. However, today, countless of journalists are fired for such things as expressing their views, uploading footage, and even blogging online. Some governments continue to censor information and use media to promote propaganda. Worse yet, more than 500 journalists have been killed in the last 10 years, with 60 killings reported worldwide in 2010 alone.
For the journalists working in the war zones and the conflict zones, the immediate threat is the conflict itself. But it is not that one. The region we belong to, particularly these days, which is going through many big changes and upheavals from Morocco to Afghanistan. It is also the extremism, the irresponsible groups, and the ideological environment sometimes that put the journalists in danger. So the dangers are security dangers, political dangers, and the environment itself. So we have a responsibility as governments, as civil society, as societies to protect the journalists, to protect all those who would like to give us information, who try to bring the reflection of the reality to us.
We are entering a new world for expression, exchange of information, and dialogue. In uncharted waters, we must remain true to the compass we have in the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. This must remain the starting point for all our action and the measure of its success.
On Wednesday, the United Nations and the UN's Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, held a day-long event at UN headquarters, where UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, among many top UN officials, ambassadors and leading journalists, expressed his concerns over the need for greater protection of journalists and online reporters, and for the increase in murder and jail rates, often followed by impunity, reflecting, quote, a disturbing lack of official concern for the protection of journalists.
Many other journalists languish in jail simply for doing their jobs. On this day, we call for justice and freedom for those still detained. We pledge to bridge the digital divide so that all people can benefit from access to new media and communication technologies. The rights to freedom of expression, information, and association are not abstract principles. They are rights that states have an obligation to fulfill.
We have to make a very strong advocacy for the freedom of expression and also for the free conditions of journalists taking their professional responsibilities. I believe that advocacy is very important. Then, of course, it's the overall framework of how journalists work, and also to send a strong message that impunity, when we see violence against journalists and killings, of course, which is the ultimate, I would say, violation of their right to make us know what is happening in the world, impunity is not acceptable. And we make a very strong case with many governments in very concrete cases that such cases should be perpetrators should be persecuted. There should be a strong legal also provisions for such cases. And we have, by the way, done a lot in very many countries in putting the respective legislation so that freedom of expression is protected.
With new social and political threats developing around the world, protecting human rights through state authorities is more crucial than ever. Today, the United Nations calls on all governments to join them to guarantee and promote the freedom of expression in all forms of communication in and around the world. Afaf Kanja for South South News, United Nations.